The stars hung silently above the battlefield, where the Galactic Coalition warships exchanged fire with the Drakari Empire vessels. This scene had played out countless times across 800 millennia. Both civilizations had developed technologies so advanced they seemed like magic, yet neither could gain the upper hand. Captain Ta of the Coalition flagship sighed as he watched the tactical display. Another ritualized engagement. Another 1,000 lives to be sacrificed on both sides. The casualty reports would be filed, territories would shift by fractional parsecs, and tomorrow they would do it all again. Incoming transmission from High Command, his communications officer announced. The usual orders, I assume, Tai replied, not bothering to look up. Acceptable losses not to exceed 3% of fleet capacity. Meanwhile, Earth had watched from afar. Humans had chosen neutrality for centuries, building their own civilization while studying the seemingly eternal conflict from a distance. Tad remembered when he first joined the Coalition fleet. He had been young then, full of fire and belief in the cause. The Drakari were monsters, they had said. Enemies of all that was good. That was 200 years ago. Coalition medical technology kept him alive and fit for duty, but it could not preserve his passion. The battle unfolded with cold precision. Tad's ship, the Morning Light, moved in perfect formation with the rest of the Coalition fleet. On the other side, the Drakari ships mirrored their movements. It was like a dance, one that everyone knew the steps to by heart. Enemy flagship is moving to position Alpha, reported his tactical officer. Ta nodded. As expected, move to counter position and prepare to fire main cannons. The Morning Light's engines hummed as the massive ship turned. Through the view screen, Ta could see the Drakari vessels. They were beautiful in their way, with their curved hulls that looked like black glass. He wondered if the Drakari captain opposite him felt the same emptiness. Sir, his second-in-command said quietly, I've been studying the historical records. Do you know what started this war? Tai turned to look at the young officer. No one does anymore. The records say different things. Some say the Drakari attacked first. Others say we did. After this long, does it matter? The weapons officer called out. Main cannons charge. Target locked. Fire, Ta said without emotion. Beams of energy lanced across space, striking Drakari shields. At the same time, enemy fire hit the Morning Light. The ship shook slightly, but the advanced stabilizers kept the crew steady on their feet. Damage report, Ta called out. Minor damage to outer shields, all systems operational. Ta nodded. It was all going according to the script. The Coalition would lose some ships. The Drakari would lose some ships. Neither side would gain or lose much territory. It had been this way for thousands of years. On a small screen on his command chair, Tai watched as one of the Coalition cruisers exploded. 300 lives gone in an instant. He made a note to include them in his report. Their families would receive the standard honors. New crew members would be assigned to a new ship. The war would go on. Sir, his communications officer said, we're picking up an unusual signal. Tai raised an eyebrow. Unusual how? It's not Coalition or Drakari. It appears to be human. This was unexpected. Humans rarely ventured into battle zones. They were a young species, barely 50,000 years into space travel. They had wisely chosen to stay neutral in the ancient conflict. Put it on screen, Tai ordered. The main view screen shifted to show a human face, a woman with dark eyes and a serious expression. Coalition vessel, this is Captain Jin of the Earth observation ship Curiosity. We are conducting authorized studies of the conflict. Please be advised that we are non-combatants. Ta leaned forward. This is a dangerous area, Captain Jin. Your ship could be hit by stray fire. The human smiled slightly. We understand the risk, Captain. We've been studying your war for centuries. Our shields can handle stray shots. I don't understand your interest, Ta said. This war will likely continue long after your civilization has ended. Jin's expression turned thoughtful. Perhaps, but we humans are curious by nature. We seek to understand what we observe. And what have you observed? Tai asked, genuinely interested. That both sides fight with precision, but without passion. That this war has become like breathing to you, something done without thought. Tai felt a flicker of discomfort. The human had seen too clearly. Sir, his tactical officer interrupted, the Drakari are moving to position beta. We need to respond. Ta nodded. Excuse me, Captain Jin. Duty calls. The human nodded. We'll continue our observations from a safe distance. The screen returned to the view of the battlefield. The morning light moved into its next position, and the dance continued. Hours later, as the battle wound down according to schedule, Todd found himself thinking about the human captain's words. How long would this war continue? Would it still be raging when the stars themselves began to die? He looked at the casualty reports. Exactly 3% fleet loss as permitted. The Drakari losses were similar. Tomorrow, they would rebuild. The day after, they would fight again. And the day after that. And the day after that. From their distant observation point, the human ship watched. Ta wondered what they were learning, what they were planning. Humans were young, but they were clever. They had achieved in 50,000 years what had taken the Coalition 5 times as long. As the morning light turned to return to Coalition space, Ta looked one last time at the human vessel. For the first time in centuries, he felt something unexpected. Curiosity about what might come next. The war had been the same for 800,000 years, but perhaps, just perhaps, something was about to change. Commander June stood on the bridge of the Prometheus, humanity's most advanced warship. Though small compared to the capital ships of the warring factions, it contained technology that would change the course of galactic history. Final systems check complete, Science Officer Han reported, her fingers dancing across the quantum interface. June nodded, feeling the weight of responsibility. Earth's government had debated for months before authorizing this intervention. The Drakari attack on the human research outpost at Proxima Centauri had forced their hand. This ship represents 5 generations of theoretical physics that neither the Coalition nor the Drakari have conceived of, June told his crew of 12. We may not return from this mission, but if we succeed, we'll save billions of lives. Engineer Kim looked up from her station. The dimensional drive is operational. We can depart on your command. June took a deep breath and looked at each crew member. They were the best Earth had to offer. Each was a genius in their field. Each had volunteered knowing the risks. Remember the attack on Proxima, June said quietly. 300 researchers, families, children. The Drakari didn't even issue a warning. The bridge fell silent. Everyone remembered the images from Proxima. The research station had been peaceful. The attack had been swift and brutal. Start the dimensional drive countdown, June ordered. 10 minutes to jump. The ship hummed as power flowed to the drive. The Prometheus was unlike any ship built before. Its hull was made of materials that could shift between dimensions. Its weapons could alter the laws of physics in a targeted area. Its shields could bend gravity itself. Officer Han approached June with a small data pad. Commander, I finished the final calculations for our arrival point. We'll emerge directly between the main battle groups. June studied the numbers. Good work. This should give us maximum impact. From her station at the front of the bridge, Navigator Min spoke up. Commander, are we sure about this? We're one ship against 2 ancient empires. June walked to the center of the bridge. The question was fair. They were about to challenge civilizations that had been fighting since before humans had invented the wheel. The Coalition and the Drakari have been locked in their dance of death for so long they've stopped looking for new solutions, June explained. They've reached a perfect balance of destruction, but we've been watching, learning, and thinking differently. Engineer Kim joined them. Our dimensional physics took a different path than theirs. While they focused on bigger weapons, we explored the spaces between realities. 5 minutes to jump, the ship's computer announced. June walked to the viewport. Earth shone blue and beautiful below them. Would he ever see it again? "Do you know what I find most tragic about this war?" he asked his crew. Neither side remembers why they're fighting. 800,000 years, and the reason is lost to time. Medical Officer Park spoke up from her station. "My grandfather was part of the first contact team with the coalition. He said they seemed surprised that we didn't immediately choose a side. Both sides tried to recruit us," Security Chief Tu added. "They offered technology, territory, protection." June nodded, "And we refused. We chose to learn from both while joining neither. That neutrality has protected us, but it can't continue. Not after Proxima." 3 minutes to jump. The crew moved to their stations for the dimensional transition. The process was complex and dangerous. The Prometheus would slip between the layers of reality, traveling instantly to the heart of the distant battlefield. "Commander," Communications Officer Ba called out. "Message from Earth Command." A hologram appeared in the center of the bridge. General Sun, head of Earth's Defense Force, stood tall and solemn. "Commander June, you carry humanity's hopes with you," the general said. "The Prometheus is our greatest achievement, but remember, the technology alone isn't enough. It's how you use it that matters." June bowed his head. "We understand, General." 1 minute to jump. The general continued. "Your mission is clear. Demonstrate our capabilities, end the immediate conflict, and open diplomatic channels. But June," his voice softened, "bring your people home if you can." "We'll do our best, sir," June promised. The hologram faded. The bridge was quiet except for the hum of the dimensional drive spinning up to full power. 30 seconds. June took his command seat. "All crew, secure for dimensional transition." The lights dimmed as power flowed to the drive. On their screens, they could see the energy building, folding space itself around the ship. 10 seconds. Engineer Kim's voice was steady as she monitored the drive. "All parameters nominal. Dimensional fold forming. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Reality shifted around them. For a brief moment, the crew felt as if they existed everywhere and nowhere at once. Through the viewport, they saw impossible colors and shapes that human eyes were never meant to see. Then, with a gentle shudder, the Prometheus emerged into normal space, directly in the middle of the largest battle in 50,000 years. Hundreds of massive warships surrounded them, exchanging planet-killing weapons. The coalition ships, sleek and silver. The Drakari vessels, dark and angular. Both sides so focused on destroying each other that they hadn't yet noticed the small human ship that had appeared in their midst. "All systems operational," Officer Hand reported, sounding surprised. "Dimensional transition complete with no damage." On the main screen, Jung could see the battle unfolding around them. It was exactly as their intelligence had described. Ritualized, predictable, deadly. "They haven't detected us yet," Security Chief Du said. "Our dimensional signature is unfamiliar to their sensors." June stood up and straightened his uniform. The moment of truth had arrived. "Officer Ba, open channels to both fleets. Let's introduce ourselves." As Communications Officer Ba prepared the transmission, June looked at his crew. They had trained for years for this moment. In the next few minutes, they would either change galactic history or become a footnote in it. "Ready, Commander," Ba said. June nodded. "Let's show them what humans can do." The Prometheus emerged from hyperspace at Rigel Prime, where the largest battle in 50,000 years was underway. Hundreds of massive warships exchanged planet-killing weapons while smaller craft darted between them like angry insects. Neither side paid attention to the tiny human vessel that appeared at the edge of the conflict. "Open communications on all frequencies," June ordered. "Coalition and Drakari forces, this is Commander June of the Earth ship Prometheus. We demand an immediate ceasefire." The response was predictable. Coalition Admiral Yoon appeared on screen, his ancient eyes narrowing with annoyance. Remove your vessel from the combat zone. Human. This is not your concern. The Drakari general responded similarly, her scaled face showing disdain. 800 millennia of war will not be interrupted by primitives. June nodded to Han. Activate the gravitational shield. The Prometheus moved between the fleets, and suddenly every weapon fired by either side curved away harmlessly. The bridge crew watched in tense silence as bright energy beams bent around their ship like water around stones. The massive fleet weapons that could crack planets now couldn't even touch the small human vessel. Gravitational shield functioning at full capacity, Han reported. Her fingers moved quickly over her console, making tiny adjustments. The Coalition is increasing power to their main cannons. On the main view screen, Admiral Yoon's face showed the first flicker of concern. Behind him, Jun could see Coalition officers rushing to different stations. "What is this technology?" the Admiral demanded. "Our sensors show impossible gravitational distortions around your vessel." Before Jun could answer, the Drakari general cut into the communication. Her reptilian features were tight with anger. "This is Coalition trickery, some new weapon they've developed. I assure you, this is purely human technology," Jun said calmly, "and it is merely a demonstration of our capabilities." Outside, the battle had paused. Both fleets held position, their weapons still firing but the energy dissipating harmlessly around the Prometheus. 800,000 years of warfare, temporarily halted by a single ship. "Security Chief Du, what's their tactical response?" Jun asked. Du studied his screens. Both fleets are repositioning. The Coalition is moving to surround us from above. The Drakari are positioning below. They're trying to find a weak spot in our shield. Jun had expected this. Let them try. Engineer Kim, prepare the second phase demonstration. Kim nodded seriously. Dimensional wave generator charging. 2 minutes to full power. On the communication screen, Admiral Yoon was speaking urgently with his officers. The Drakari general was doing the same. Both were clearly shaken by the human ship's capabilities. "They're launching fighter craft," Du reported. "Small, fast ships approaching from multiple directions." Jun watched as dozens of small craft from both sides streaked toward the Prometheus. "Let them come closer. I want them to see what happens next." The fighters approached cautiously, weapons hot but not firing. They circled the human ship like curious predators. "Dimensional wave generator at full power," Kim announced. "Coalition and Drakari forces," Jun broadcast. "We have shown you that your weapons cannot harm us. We will now demonstrate why you should agree to our ceasefire demand." Jun nodded to Kim. First demonstration. Target: the unoccupied moon of Rigel Prime. Kim activated the dimensional wave generator. A beam of pale blue light shot from the Prometheus toward the small moon orbiting the distant planet. When it struck, something impossible happened. The moon didn't explode. It didn't break apart. It simply disappeared. Gasps came from both the Coalition and Drakari communication channels. "The moon has been shifted to a parallel dimension," Jun explained. "It is undamaged, but exists in a different reality." "Impossible," Admiral Yoon whispered. The Drakari general hissed something in her native language that the translators couldn't catch. Second demonstration, Jun said. "Engineer Kim, return the moon." Kim adjusted the settings and fired again. The blue beam shot out once more, and suddenly the moon reappeared exactly where it had been. The fighter craft that had been approaching the Prometheus quickly retreated. "Our technology allows us to shift matter between dimensions," Jun explained. "We can do this to any object, a moon, a planet, or a fleet of warships. The choice is yours." Admiral Yoon found his voice first. "This violates all known laws of physics. How have you achieved this?" "Humans took a different path," Jun said simply. "While you perfected the art of destruction, we explored the spaces between realities." The Drakari general leaned forward. "You are bluffing. No small ship could have such power." Jun smiled. "Medical Officer Park, Please attend to our guests." Park touched her console. A moment later, both Admiral Yoon and the Drakari general disappeared from their command ships and reappeared on the bridge of the Prometheus. The two ancient enemies stood facing each other, their images no longer on screens but physically present. The dimensional transporter had worked perfectly. "Welcome aboard," Jun said. Both leaders reached for weapons they no longer had. Security Chief Du stood ready, but there was no need for force. The leaders were too shocked to act. "This is abduction," Admiral Yoon sputtered. "This is diplomacy," Jun corrected. "You will both return safely to your ships once we've talked." The Drakari general looked around the human bridge with wide eyes. "How many of these vessels does Earth possess?" "Just this one for now," Jun admitted. "But it's enough." He gestured to the view screen where both fleets were visible, weapons silent for the first time in millennia. 800,000 years of war, trillions of lives lost. And for what? Do either of you even remember why this conflict began? The ancient enemies looked at each other. For a moment, neither spoke. "It began with the colonization rights to the Centauri sector," Admiral Yoon said finally. "No," the Drakari general hissed. "It was the coalition attack on our generation ships." Jun shook his head. "Your own historians don't agree. The truth is lost to time, but the killing continues." He walked between them, these leaders of civilizations so ancient they had forgotten their own beginnings. "Earth offers a simple choice," Jun said. "A ceasefire now, followed by peace talks on neutral ground, or a demonstration of our technology that neither of your fleets will survive." The bridge was silent. Through the viewports, the stars shone coldly on the paused battle. 800,000 years of history hung in the balance. "You would destroy us?" the Drakari general asked quietly. "No," Jun said firmly. "We would save you from yourselves." "What is this technology?" demanded Admiral Yoon as his flagship's main cannon discharged into empty space despite perfect targeting. "You have 40 minutes to stand down," Jun broadcast, "or we will demonstrate our full capabilities." Both factions responded by launching their most devastating weapons. The Prometheus remained untouched. 20 minutes remaining, Jun announced. "Observe." At Engineer Kim's command, the dimensional phase shifter activated. 3 coalition battlecruisers and 3 Drakari dreadnoughts simply vanished, then reappeared moments later completely intact but with all systems offline. 10 minutes, Jun continued as panic spread through both fleets. Hand sensors detected hundreds of weapons being aimed at the Prometheus. 5 minutes, Jun stated calmly as the ship's quantum core began to hum. "We can end your civilizations without casualties. The choice is yours." The Drakari general broke first. "Stand down all weapons," she ordered. Admiral Yoon followed seconds later. The bridge of the Prometheus was silent as the crew watched the mighty warships of both ancient empires power down their weapons. No one had expected the alien leaders to yield so quickly. "They're standing down," Security Chief Du confirmed, his voice barely above a whisper. "All weapon systems across both fleets are powering down." Jun kept his face neutral, but inside his heart raced. The plan was working. 40 years of secret research, 5 years of building the Prometheus, and now, finally, humanity's gamble was paying off. "Admiral Yoon, General," Jun addressed both leaders who had been returned to their ships after their brief visit to the Prometheus. "I see you've made a wise choice." The Drakari general's scaled face appeared on the main screen. Her yellow eyes narrowed. "Do not mistake tactical retreat for surrender, human. We have existed for millions of years. We can wait." Admiral Yoon's ancient face appeared beside hers. "The general and I agree on little, but she speaks truth. You have 1 ship. We each have thousands." Jun nodded to Engineer Kim. She pressed a sequence on her console. Outside, a blue-white energy field expanded from the Prometheus, washing over ship after ship in both fleets. "What are you doing?" the Admiral demanded as the energy touched his flagship. A simple scan, Jim explained. We're mapping your fleet compositions, weapon systems, and, yes, the locations of all your homeworlds, colonies, and military bases. The two leaders fell silent. The implication was clear. The Prometheus could target any world in either empire. You wouldn't destroy civilian worlds, Admiral Yoon said, but his voice lacked conviction. No, we wouldn't, Jun agreed. But we could shift them temporarily into another dimension. Imagine your homeworld simply gone. For a day, a week. How would your empires respond? Science Officer Han approached Jun with a datapad. Commander, scan complete. We have locations for all major systems in both empires. Thank you, Officer Han, Jun said loudly enough for the alien leaders to hear. He looked back at the screen. You now have 30 minutes to agree to peace talks. The Drakari general snarled. This is blackmail. This is peace enforcement, Jun corrected. For 800,000 years, you've been killing each other without purpose. It ends today. He nodded to Communications Officer Ba, who muted the transmission. How are they responding? Jun asked Security Chief Du. Du studied his sensors. Both fleets are maintaining their positions. No weapons charging, but their communications are going crazy. They're talking to their governments, requesting instructions. Jun nodded. As expected, their military hierarchies are too rigid to make decisions this big. Medical Officer Park spoke up. Commander, I was monitoring their vital signs during the demonstration. Both leaders showed extreme stress reactions, but also relief. Relief? Jun asked. Yes, Park confirmed. Especially Admiral Yoon. It was subtle, but it was there. Jun considered this. Perhaps after 800 millennia, some of them want this war to end. 20 minutes passed. The massive fleets remained in position, weapons cold. The Prometheus waited at the center of it all, a tiny ship holding two ancient empires at bay. 10 minutes remaining, Officer Bai announced. Engineer Kim approached Jun's command chair. The quantum core is fully charged, Commander. If they don't agree, we can proceed with the final demonstration. Jun nodded grimly. The final demonstration would shift both flagships partially out of phase, not enough to remove them from this reality, but enough to prove that the Prometheus could target specific ships for dimensional shifting. I hope it doesn't come to that, he said quietly. 5 minutes later, the communication system chimed. Incoming transmission from both leaders, simultaneously. They reported. Surprised. On screen, Jun ordered. Admiral Yoon and the Drakari general appeared side by side. They looked different now, less arrogant, more thoughtful. Commander Jun, the admiral spoke first. I have consulted with the Coalition High Council. We are prepared to enter peace negotiations. The Drakari general nodded. The Imperial Command has authorized me to agree to a temporary ceasefire while terms are discussed. Jun kept his face neutral, not revealing his triumph. Excellent. The Earthship diplomatic envoy is on its way. It carries representatives who will help mediate your discussions. They will arrive in 6 hours. 6 hours? Admiral Yoon looked shocked. They were waiting that close to a battle zone. We were confident in the Prometheus, Jun said simply. The truth was more complex. Earth had gambled everything on this mission. If the Prometheus had failed, the diplomatic envoy would have turned around and headed home, and humanity would have prepared for war. But Jun saw no reason to share this information. There is one condition, the Drakari general said. Your ship, the Prometheus. We want to ensure it remains present during the negotiations. Jun nodded. Of course, we will maintain position. After the transmission ended, the bridge crew finally allowed themselves to celebrate. Some hugged, others laughed in relief. They had done it. Humanity's most ambitious diplomatic mission had succeeded. Navigator Min checked her chronometer. Commander, from our arrival to their agreement, exactly 47 minutes. Jun smiled. An 800,000-year war, ended in under 50 minutes. Engineer Kim laughed. No one back on Earth will believe this. They will when the peace treaty is signed, Jun said. He looked out at the silent fleets, these ancient warships now hanging in space without purpose. I wonder what they'll do now. Learn to live without war, Officer Han suggested. Just as we had to. Jun nodded. Human history had its own dark chapters, its own centuries of conflict, but they had moved beyond it. Perhaps these ancient species could do the same. Commander, Officer Ba called out. Message from Earth Command. Priority 1. Put it through, Jun ordered. General Sun's face appeared on the screen. He looked tense, waiting for news. Mission accomplished, General, Jun reported. Both sides have agreed to peace talks. The general's expression transformed into one of pure relief. Well done, Commander. Well done indeed. For the first time since the mission began, Jun allowed himself to fully feel the weight of what they had accomplished. A tiny human ship had just changed the course of galactic history. Jun stood in the conference room of the Prometheus, watching as the Coalition and Drakari leaders signed the peace treaty exactly 50 minutes after the human ship had arrived. 800,000 years, Admiral Yun murmured, ended by a species we considered irrelevant. The Drakari general nodded slowly. We had reached such advancement that we forgot to look in new directions. Humans found physics we never imagined. Earth will establish a peacekeeping authority, Jun explained, with representatives from all species. The technology we've demonstrated today will be shared, gradually, once peace is established. As the diplomats finalized the details, Engineer Kim approached Jun quietly. Commander, incoming transmission from Earth. They're calling you a hero. Jun shook his head. I'm just the first human to show that sometimes the oldest conflicts need the newest perspective. Outside the viewports, Coalition and Drakari ships were already beginning joint operations to help worlds devastated by centuries of war. A new era had begun, catalyzed by humanity's intervention, and completed in less time than it took to prepare a meal. The treaty signing ceremony was small, but its meaning was huge. In the conference room of the Prometheus, 3 civilizations stood together for the first time. The Coalition representatives wore their formal silver uniforms. The Drakari delegates were draped in ceremonial black scales. The humans wore simple blue uniforms, plain next to the ancient splendor of the other species. The final section addresses technology exchange. Earth's lead diplomat Sue explained. Humanity will share limited dimensional physics with both your peoples, while you will share your medical and energy technologies with us. Admiral Yun signed his name with a steady hand. My people have forgotten what peace feels like. Many will struggle to adapt. The Drakari general made her mark with a claw dipped in traditional ink. As will mine. 800 millennia of hatred will not fade quickly. Jun watched them carefully. He had seen many emotions cross their alien faces during these hours. Shock, anger, fear, and now, perhaps, hope. That is why the peacekeeping authority is so important, Jun said. A neutral force, with ships equipped with our technology, will help maintain the peace while trust builds. Through the viewport, Jun could see Coalition and Drakari ships working together for the first time. They were using tractor beams to clear debris from the battle, saving damaged vessels from both sides. It was a small start. Science Officer Han stood at Jun's side. My sensors show their crews are nervous. They've never been this close without firing weapons. They'll learn, Jun said, just as we learned from our own wars. The treaty complete, the leaders rose. For a moment, they stood awkwardly, centuries of hatred making even simple courtesy difficult. Then Admiral Yun did something surprising. He extended his hand to the Drakari general in the human gesture of peace they had observed. The general hesitated, then grasped his hand briefly. The room fell silent. Everyone understood they were witnessing history. My scientists have a theory about your technology, the admiral said to Jun. We believe you discovered the quantum membrane that separates dimensions. Jun smiled. Close, We found the mathematics that describes the spaces between realities. Rather than pushing against the universe, we learned to slip between its layers. My engineers would very much like to speak with yours, the Drakari general said, when the time is right. All in good time, Jun promised. First, we rebuild. The alien leaders returned to their ships. The Earth diplomats prepared to depart for the formal peace conference that would begin the next day. Soon, only the Prometheus crew remained in the conference room. Engineer Kim approached Jun again. Commander, that message from Earth. Jun nodded. Put it through here. The screen lit up with the face of the Earth president. Commander Jun, on behalf of humanity, I thank you and your crew. Your mission has succeeded beyond our highest hopes. The crew stood a little straighter at the praise. Thank you, Madam President, Jun replied. But our work is just beginning. The peace is fragile. We understand, the President said. That's why the first peacekeeping ships are already preparing to depart. It will reach your position in 3 days. Jun couldn't hide his surprise. 3 days. We expected weeks of preparation. The President smiled. We had faith in you, Commander. The moment you reported success, we launched Phase 2. After the transmission ended, Jun turned to his crew. They looked tired but proud. We did it, Navigator Min said softly. We actually did it. Security Chief Tu laughed. 800,000 years of war. Ended by 12 humans in a small ship. Not ended, Jun corrected. Paused. The real work comes next. He walked to the viewport. In the distance, he could see the Coalition homeworld. It was a beautiful blue-green planet, much like Earth. The Drakari home system was further away, but its location was marked on their star charts. Worlds that had been enemies for longer than humans had existed were now cautious allies. Commander, Officer Han called from her station. I'm detecting something unusual. Jun joined her at the sensor console. What is it? Communication signals, she said, sounding puzzled. Between Coalition and Drakari civilian channels. They're talking to each other. Jun smiled. Of course they are. Their people have been separated by war for 800 millennia. They must have so many questions. Medical Officer Park joined them. I've analyzed the data from both species. Despite their differences, they're remarkably similar biologically. They could have been cousins once, long ago. Perhaps that's why they fought so bitterly, Jun suggested. Sometimes we hate most what reminds us of ourselves. As night fell over that sector of space, the Prometheus remained on station. Its crew took turns resting while others maintained watch. The peace was new and fragile. Trust would take time to build. In his quarters, Jun recorded a message for his family on Earth. We did what we came to do, he told them. The war that seemed endless has ended, not with destruction, but with hope. He looked out his small window at the stars. For 800,000 years, those stars had witnessed endless battle. Now they shone on something new. The first fragile moments of peace. Sometimes, Jun said to himself, the oldest conflicts just need the newest perspective. Outside, Coalition and Drakari ships continued their joint operations, former enemies working side by side. A new galactic era had begun. The end.